Then I'd like to invite Mr. Menon from Trilegal. You have a vast experience in the area of energy and infrastructure that we are keen to hear about.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you, Mr. Sharma, for that extremely fancy presentation. I've just realized that lawyers are terrible with presentations. So in pure terms of manufacturing, and I'll focus more on the manufacturing sector because you've heard everything about industrial corridors. There's nothing, I think, remaining for you to know. But purely speaking about manufacturing, I look back upon our experiences as lawyers advising various entities who intended to set up manufacturing units, both domestic and international. The first and primary concern that we used to hear from all our clients was, can you please give us an exhaustive list of all permits that I need to set up this manufacturing facility? Any industry, you name it, and same query is the first step for any investor. And believe me, with all our sincerity, we used to come up with a list, but then caveat it saying, depending on which state you're looking at, we will have to go there and work with a local lawyer in that state to figure out the very minuscule approvals and permits that you need from some authorities I haven't even heard of. So that was what it was a couple of years back. But if you now look at it, given the whole industrial NIMZ, the manufacturing zones and the SEZs that have been developed in the country, that issue has substantially reduced. I can't say it's gone away, but it's substantially reduced. The government has a policy of a single window clearance. Various state governments are trying to come up with a single window clearance philosophy. What it does really is, and to give you an example of Telangana, which has recently come up with IPAS. It's a statutory act which has provided for a single window clearance for any kind of infrastructure energy project, where you just make an application to the nodal agency, giving your project descriptions. Once your project has been approved, you make that application to nodal agency. The nodal agency goes and does all the running around, at your cost, of course, to get you the approvals. So that, if you were to just look at lead time to start work on your construction work or your, even the inception work, it saves you a good 6 months, if not more. So you get an advantage of 6 months by this very simple single window clearance. Now, while some states have been successful in implementing it, there are also certain, and I have to put both sides of the story before you, there are certain states that are still struggling with the single window clearance because of a disconnect between the various government departments. And like Mr. Sharma just mentioned, that in the industrial corridors, he said you don't have to run to municipal bodies, which is absolutely true. But if you were to actually go and speak to a city municipal authority, for instance, and I'm taking an example of Mumbai, sir, because one of our clients has faced this. The municipal authorities are aware that such a corridor is being built, and they know about it and all of that, but they're not clued in. So, and they feel that they derive, and rightly so, they derive their powers under the Constitution, and they believe that they are the authorities who can develop or do anything with relation to city planning. So while the act, like Mr. Sharma was saying, it comes to your aid and you have to just approach the SPV to get all of this done, there are certain niggles which have to be ironed out, and my suggestion would be to take the urban local bodies together rather than exclude them from the process to make it smoother. Yes, you can do it, you have the central and the state backing, but there is this third arm which the Constitution has identified and empowered to do certain functions. So take them along to make the process smoother. So that's just on the whole approval and permitting issues with respect to manufacturing. Let's look at the other issues that the government is trying to do in terms of sorting out the infrastructure mess that we have been in the last couple of years in terms of stranded projects. And we're talking about industrial corridors, we're talking about roads and highways to be built. Well, there is a large capacity of roads and highways that are stranded, but the government is completely aware of this. They have come out with various means and mechanisms to ease these stranded projects. To give an example about a hybrid annuity model, it's a new concept in developing road projects. So how it works is basically that the bid parameter for selecting a highway developer is the life cycle project cost. So you bid on the life cycle project cost. About 40% of the project cost is upfront put in by NHAI. So National Highway Authority of India puts in 40% of the project cost, which is pretty much your equity component in a project finance. And the remaining 60% is to be brought in by the developers. The developers can recover the 60% along with their bank interest cost from the annuity payments to the NHAI. So the risk of bringing in immediate equity is done away with. You are given a time period to recover the investments that you have brought in. So the government is standing behind for you with respect of the anticipated traffic toll collection, any reduction in traffic. So all those risks are being borne by the government, and you're being given enough time to recover your investments. The other aspect is the liberalized exit policy scheme. Now we had, and I mentioned this yesterday as well, this is a phenomenon kind of relevant to most of the projects in India, which is a lock-in of the promoter in the SPV or in the concession company. So we have a typical lock-in of say 5 years or 2 to 5 years, depending on various what kind of infrastructure project you're looking at. So in the road sector, there were various promoters who had very aggressively bid for these projects, could not complete them, were locked in or were close to completion, but were locked in and they could not dilute and get fresh equity in. So the government has liberalized the exit policy, saying, fine, if you have constructed the project and 2 years post-construction, you can do 100% divestment. So it's not as if you have to wait for the entire 5-year or whatever tenure of lock-in period you had, but post 2 years of COD, you can divest 100% of your equity, bring in fresh capital, which can then run the project. So that's one mechanism. The third was one-time fund infusion. Now a lot of promoters just stood up and said, you know what, I don't have money. I'll either file for insolvency or I can't carry this project forward. So what did the government do? The government said, fine, we will bring in a one-time fund infusion for very select projects selected on a extremely, the selection process of the project is pretty serious. They scrutinize the projects, they scrutinize the fact situation, and then when they approve it, they make a one-time equity infusion into the project, which is just to help the promoter tide over his immediate cash crunch. They're not taking on the project on their books. It's just a one-time fund infusion to help the promoter tide over his financial distress. Then there is a scheme called the 525 scheme, which is basically a means to refinance your existing loans. You have a certain debt and you want to refinance it. You want longer tenures, so the government allows for a longer tenure of up to 25 years to get your debt, and allows you a refinancing at every 5 years. Now, what that does is to have a slightly more competitive, aggressive financial model, because you are literally speaking taking a punt on the interest rate every 5 years. So, if you can take a very judicious view of how the interest rates are going to pan out, the 525 can be actually very remunerative for you, because you have the ability to recycle your debt at every end of every 5 years. So that was not allowed earlier. Now that's been allowed to again revive the sector. There's also a National Investment Infrastructure Fund, which acts like a banker to the banker. So basically, it's a fund set up to provide equity to various financial institutions that lend to infrastructure projects. So because, we had various financial institutions in various sectors like railways, even in the road sector, but they didn't have enough cash. So the fund has been set up to fund them so that they can do onward lending. So these are a few of the means that the government has come up with to kind of help the whole manufacturing sector. As you all know, probably we are, I think about 1.8% of our workforce currently is in the manufacturing sector. Now that is an extremely low number. If you look at global percentages, there is an immediate need to increase it. Just to give an example, China is at 14%, and there's a huge disparity. So these are like steps that the government is taking to ensure that the manufacturing sector is the whole ease of doing business, especially in the manufacturing sector, is provided some more certainty and help.